Bruchim Aboyim B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Irgen Shir Torah. We would like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Harv Yaakov Zev Smith Shlita on when is Boyer permissible. Like we would be Gashakach to Rab Doive and Ephraim Nierenberg for sponsoring today's shir Lili Nishmas. Their mother, Allah Shalom, Chassi Fruma Bat Tzvi Hirsch, Allah Shalom, Tanishmosa Tzura B'Tzor HaChaim. Harv Smith Shlita.
Recently we heard a few interesting boyer shilas where someone had the kugel was burnt on the bottom and he wanted to cut off the burnt part so he could serve the rest of it. Is that a problem of boyer? Got a shilah about someone that had matzos, a bunch of different matzos, but he wanted to save shleimim from a shalashudis. Can you take out matzos as they gave for a whole year and certainly on Pesach, but to take out matzos that are shleimim, that you want to remain shleimim. In other words, you're not using it now, you're taking out now for later. Is that boyer? Someone that wanted to peel the skin off the chicken at night for the next day, would that be a problem of boyer, taking skin off chicken? Ice cubes in water, and as we'll see, a whole group of questions, which is really a sugi for itself, and that's what we call the question of min echad. Because as we know, boyer only begins when you have a taruvais of two different foods, two different socks, two different clothing, whatever it is. So, two mini oichel, we know, the Shulchan Aruch says in Shin Yotes, today I was Simon Siv Gimel, two minim is asa. The big question is, if it's min echad, do we say ice cubes and water, it's all water, it's one min? Do we say lechem mishnah, matzah, broken matzah, whole matzah, but it's matzah? Do we say that the fact that it's skin on chicken is one? Egg yolks and egg whites, and we'll see many common shilas. But I want to try to crystallize the question for us before we proceed. Imagine someone has a big koilich, that's the Yiddish word for the big challah you have by a simcha, and Friday night he has a small oilam, so he wants to cut it in half and put half away. So he decides the right side looks a little nicer, he'll cut off the left side and put that away for another time. Hayala adas, that's boyer? You're cutting off the psoilus and the oichel? No. Challah is challah. Min echad is not boyer, l'chayr. More geshmak, the famous question the Yeshua Yaakov in the beginning of Shinya test asks, how could boyer ever be malacha deraisa? The side of any malacha, it has to be a malacha tzricha l'guf, there has to be a positive benefit. Typically, boyer is you take out the psoilus, you take out the shells from the food. You're not using the psoilus. So why isn't every boyer by definition a malacha and tzricha l'gufa? You're not using what you're taking out. Says the Yeshua Yaakov, the Teretz is pashit. The issa is not taking out the psoilus. The issa is tikkun oichel, perfecting the oichel. You want to have eggs, but you can't have eggs because there are eggshells in the mixture. So you're taking out the shells, not the issa is taking out the shells, it's perfecting the oichel. So once we understand that boyer is not simply selecting, but it's tikkun oichel, now we can understand. If we could assume min echad is min echad and it's exempt from boyer because it's not a taruvais, so there's no tikkun oichel. Or maybe we'll say, Rabbi, one second, let me figure you out. You want to dafka take out the shleimim for later. Why take out the shleimim? Take out the shevarim? Teretz says it is two minim for you. You can't use shevarim instead of shleimim. So even though it's physically the same, maybe it's two minim. Why are you taking off the skin of the chicken? If it's one piece of chicken, why are you taking off the skin? Teretz, you don't like it. No? So maybe it is two different, maybe an egg yolk and an egg white is two minim. So the Yisayid of today is a Chumas Hadeshen in Simon Nun Zayin. The famous Chumas Hadeshen, he speaks about there are layers of sliced fish. Let's talk about sliced salmon on a tray. Is there a problem of boyer? So his biggest side is if you have two minim, in other words, you have a layer of gefilte fish, a layer of salmon, that's boyer. Even though it's all oichel, and you can eat them all. But if you want salmon, so gefilte fish will not do the trick. So two minim, said Chumas Hadeshen, is boyer. But min echad, rows of salmon, that's not at all boyer. Azoyzok the Chumas Hadeshen. And what's inspiring, he concludes when he talks about the question of two minim, a layer of gefilte, a layer of salmon, So he says, and I quote, he says, it's ma'oid keneged svaras halev. It's unthinkable to say that if you have a row of salmon and a row of gefilte fish, one next to the other, but it's not mixed up. It's not like a cholent that's mixed up or raisins and nuts that's mixed up. So how could there be a boira, even though it's two minim, if it's a row of each? But he says, since boira is a malacha deraisa, I can't be mekel unless I have a raya bura. Now that you see how he's on fire from Yiras Shamayim, from a Shmir Shabbos, Ma'oid Keneged Svaras Leiv of the Taras HaLeiv of Chumas Hadeshin. Unthinkable. But if I don't have a raya, I'm not going to play with fire because boira is a deraisa. But be that as it may, from this Chumas Hadeshin we have two Yesodis. The Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch and Shin Yotes quotes it. The Beis Minim, different types of cake, is boira. Min echad is mutter. But the Ramah adds, even though he takes gedolos mitoich ktanois loy mikri beira. Let's say you have all salmon, true, but you have bigger slices and smaller slices. Zok the Ramah, that's also mutter. Now you notice that's something that the Chumas Desh does not say. He says min echad, but he doesn't say big and small. Where did Ramah get this from? And there's no makar of the Magen Avram. Teretz is zilbas satayma. If it's all mamish the same, if you have 25 bags of potato chips, same flavor, same size, hayal adas it's boira, you need a Chumas Hadesh to say it's mutter. Teretz has got to be a difference. But here, boys, I think is the most important yesod for today. Even though it's different, this piece of salmon is different than that piece. You know, it's bigger, a little more cooked, but that's not enough to make it into a boira situation. The Deshin is saying if it's essentially min echad, it's not boira. Now, if it's identical, so then you don't need a Chumas Hadeshin. The teretz is big and small is a good example. You might prefer big. Oh, but that's the right word. You prefer it, but you're not makpid. You know, I always say these words. It's maybe you're madif it, but you're not makpid. Or you might prefer it, but you don't insist. That is why min echad, even though it's bigger or smaller, as long as it's not a kapeda, I want this versus this. Like if you want salmon, so gefilte fish is not what you want. So two minim is a problem. Min echad, even gedolim and ketanim is mutter. Now I must mention that the Taz and Sivkot and Beis take strong exception, and he says, even though it's min echad, but if you want one over the other, it's boira. And the Chayadam goes with the Taz, but as the Mishnah Berurah quotes it, Harbi achroinim cholku olav eskimu imerama. Shepasek Chumas Hadeshin. So we have a Taz versus a Chumas Hadeshin and Ramah, and I must tell you, the Chumas Hadeshin was on, and that shuv was on fire with Yiras Shamayim. Ma'oid keneged svaras halev, and he wouldn't be mekel. But it came to two min echad, he had no problems being mekel. So we could be saimach on that. So we're going to say the following: two minim is boira, min echad is not boira. Now, the question is that in every single min echad? So let me give you a few examples, and then we'll apply it lamaisa. There's a maril in Menhagim Amid Kufayin. Discusses the following: if you have a matzah meal, and there's big pieces of matzah, the one that ground it didn't do a good job. So Zok the Maril, you're not allowed to take out the big piece of matzah from the matzah meal. Now, you could be Yom Shlomo, ask if it's Yom Tiv, so there's no bar in Yom Tiv. So let's put that for this. That's a good question, but we're not getting into that now. Zok the Magen Avraham, but we do see that a big piece of matzah or piece of matzah in matzah meal is boira. Frag the Magen Avraham, but in Siv Gimel we said that min echad is no boira. Zok the Magen Avraham, Efsha, that Lamaisa, this is two minim. He doesn't say why, but he does say that Lamaisa, this is Kemach and this is not. But Zok the Prima Godim, you'll enjoy this, the Mishpahs of Sivkot and Beis, matzah meal is used to make knedlach. I mean, this is before the minig of gebrach was invented. But they used to make knedlach out of the matzah meal. That was before the minig was brought into practice. Zok the Prima Godim, you can't make matzah meal out of matzah. You can't make a knedlach out of matzah. You're going to choke on it. So what do we see? Even if it's min echad, but if it's two functions, and you can't use this for that, that becomes two minim. So this we're going to refer to as the maril, that even though it's the same ingredient, the same hechsher, the same taste, different function is two minim. But the emphasis is not the maril's chiddush. Rashi in Masechta Shabbos, it's noteworthy. The Gemara says if a person could make one malacha, but he's over many Yisurei Torah. Remember that Gemara. Well, one of the Mishalom is he makes a chilta, a basket, a kiveres, and he's chayiv 11 Yisurei Torah. One of them, Zak Rashi, that he has different pieces of the branches that he weaves the basket, wicker basket out of, but not all the branches are usable. Some are too big, some are too small. So if he's boira, the good leaves from the bad ones, that's boira. Wait a minute, it's all min echad. Zok the eglei tal and sif ois yud zayin. Since these other leaves are not usable for a chilsa, who cares if it's min echad? It's not functional. And he says that's the pshat in the maril. Matzah meal and matzah is two minim because one doesn't serve the purpose of the other. And his rayis from Rashi regarding the different types of leaves. So the Egleital has a geshmak yisoid. He compares the Rashi to the maril. It's one yisoid of function. Now the emphasis, this is very logical because min echad means it's the same. But if you have a fundamental difference and this is not acceptable for the use, it is two minim. But let me tell you another yisoid. Now this, as we'll soon see, has a tremendous impact, even though this particular example is not relevant. But in Sif Tezvav, everything today is Shin Yotes. This is an old-fashioned idea. I'm not sure why we don't do this today, obviously, because it's not so practical. But they wanted to make mustard. Now, the way you make mustard, I guess, is you take mustard seeds and you expose it to the yolk of an egg, and that brings out the color and the taste of the mustard. Now, again, this is the way it's done. You don't have to explain, you don't have to understand exactly how it works, Sanageya. But basically, they had the mustard seed, before Shabbos, they put it into the mesanenes, a sifter. On Shabbos, they cracked an egg. Now, the emphasis is white, we call it the white. Before you beat it, it's like one mass, like a sticky mass. So they poured the entire egg into this mesanenes, and they punctured the yolk first. So the yolk became a liquid, and the yolk connected with the chardal and fell down. But the egg white was a mass, stayed on the top, because it's one. So you basically separated the egg yolk from the egg white. Zok de mechaba, that's fine. And Shabbos is fine. Question, pliya. This is boyer bekeli. Misanenes is one of the kli boyer. Zok de Magen Avram, that his pshat is that this is Siv Gimel. An egg is one. An egg is min echad. Yolk, white, it's one. And since we consider it min echad, there's no boyer. Wait. But he has an unbelievable raya. He says there's a whole sugya in Shin Chav about schita, squeezing zeis man of the raisa, squeezing an orange, shar pears could be mutimikidin. Frag the Magen Avraham, wait a second, forget about schita. Why isn't every schita boira? You're taking the juice out of the fruit. The teretz is min echad, there's no boira, and orange is min echad. Zok the Magen Avraham, and therefore the same applies. An egg is min echad. It's one food. You don't say, I bought two foods. I bought yolk and white. It's one food. You see a very revealing insight in what min echad is. Now, this Magen Avraham, as we're going to use a lot, but the Pri Megadim in Mishptei Zav Sikot Yud Bey says a different shot. And there's no hechrach that an egg is min echad. Because in this scenario, both the white and the yolk are going leibud. So you're being boira tu psailis. Tu psailis never bothers us. We spoke about it a few weeks ago. If you spill the soup with the vegetables down the sink, down the strainer, psailis and psailis, no boira. So we see a tremendous insight in an egg, if it's considered min echad. And we see the min echad het is not a pushover. The Magen Avraham is convinced an egg, yolk, and white is min echad. One more major side, and then we'll apply this to Maisa. And this is Sif Yud, which today has become extremely nageya because of the social change that we've experienced recently. Basically, the Mechaber speaks about if you have a liquid, whether it's wine or water, there's no chilik, shehem tzlulim, which basically they are drinkable as it is, so you're allowed to pass it through a mishameres. A mishameres is a strainer. Now, if it's drinkable, why are you passing it through a mishameres? Like, if it's good drinking, what are you wasting your time with a mishameres? So the Ramah adds there are kismin dakin, there are small impurities that you rather get rid of. But since you would drink it even without this sifting, this straining, it's mutter to use a mishameres. But, says the Shulchan Aruch, if it's achurim, it's undrinkable, it's not stam a little bit of kismin dakin, but it's undrinkable, then that would be bayra deraisa, because you're using a keli. Kli bayra is malacha deraisa. Now the question is, so why in the first case is it mutter using a kli bayra? Zok de mishtebura, that since you would drink it as it is, it's not a problem of bayra. Now that's not exactly min echad, but it really is. We're looking at the water or the wine as one. And if we cannot consider the kismin dakin as psoilis, so you're back to min echad. Now everybody say, that's pashit. When you have a real min echad, can you use a kli to separate different of min echad? Avada. A kli is the raisa, but if it's min echad, there's no bayra. So here we see this unbelievable yisoid, we'll soon apply it, that even though you do want to strain it somewhat, but if it's drinkable, it's nothing wrong with it, and there's no bayra. Now, lamaisa, we can understand it even better with the Yeshua Yaakov's yisoid. Because if the issa bayra is not just separating, but tikkun, so if you drink it as it is, you don't need a tikkun. Now, but make this a little more gishmak, the Bialacha quotes the Pri Megadim almost verbatim. Let's say the water is considered by all people as drinkable. But you're a mefunik, you're a finicky individual, and you don't drink any water until you strain it. So for you, it's taka asa. What's the hezbah? Pashit. For you, it's a tikkun. And for a mefunik, it's a problem. So we see another key word, a key concept, that bayra, in a certain sense, is very much subjective. If you would not use it as it is, that would be considered a problem. Now, I want to just make a point. The water with the impurities, is that shnei minim? I don't think you'll call it shnei minim. I would call it psoilis. But psoilis and oich is also bayra. So this is basically the yisoid that we've just learned, that lamaisa, once you have a min echad, so let's chaz over the yisoid this, two minei oichel, even though there's no psoilis, but if it's two different foods, that's bayra. Min echad, that's a legitimate min echad, is mutter even bekeli. Different functions, like we saw matzah meal, almost other examples, makes it into two minim. It's a machlekes if an egg is a min echad or two minim. Impurities in a drink depends if you would drink it as it is, it's fine, even bekeli. If you wouldn't drink it, it's bayra, and a mefunik is us and all of them. So now let's apply it lamais. Someone asked me the shayla, if a Shabbos, he went out and bought a lot of salmon, and Shabbos day, his parents were coming, he wanted it Friday night, before he even served the salmon, he wanted to take out the two nicest, biggest pieces to save for his parents. They were coming only first Shabbos day. So I call that, salmon kibbutz. So there's a whole pot, a real taruva, all different types of salmon, only salmon. And he's looking, digging for the bottom to take the nicest pieces to put away for tomorrow. Now, if you take the nicest pieces for tonight, even if it's bayra, it's mutter, because it's ayil, oichel, yad, and la'alta. But he's taking it out for tomorrow, so it's not la'alta. So I told him, we're to Ramah. This is the Ramah. Gedolos and katanos, there's no problem. Now, you see, he wants to gedolos, but that, as we said, that's not enough to make min echad into shtei minim. So even though it's mixed up, and it's tomorrow, it's fine. Consider this question. He made a simcha, and this is part of an influence habayri. You get back more leftovers than you started with. Somehow there's leftover trays of kugel and cake and cold cuts. Separating all the different type of cakes or different type of cold cuts or different type of kugels is bayra. Why is it bayra? These are shnei minim. Even though it's kugel, it's the lakshan kugel and potato kugel, but kugel is named two different kugels. It's like two minig dogim. Which the Chumash says that's boyer. Now lamaisa, what's interesting is that Prima Godim in Sif Cotton Hay, he gives a very interesting insight into min echad versus shnei minim. He says, let's say you have two different types of vainkshil. Now it seems, when you look in Shulchan Aruch Reish Chafei Sif Dal regarding Shechiyanu, there are different types of berries, different types of cherries. There's yellow cherries, there's red cherries, and certain different type of apples. So in Hilchas Shechiyanu, if you made a shechiyanu on a red cherry and now you have a yellow cherry, you can make another shechiyanu. It's a different min. So he says, it's not just the different color, but different color and different taste makes it shnei minim. So we see an interesting point, that the Prima Godim seems to compare min echad in boira to min echad in Hilchas Shechiyanu. And I'll add, that the Trumas Hadesha, when he discusses min echad, he compares it to Hilchas Bittel Tarfus, that min b'minoi is different than min she'enei minoi. And Hitaka says we could compare min minoi in boira to min b'minoi in kashrus. So we have two alternate leads, how to get to the end of it, at the bottom of it, minim by shechiyanu and minim by bittel of min b'minoi. Okay. So let's move on. What's noteworthy, the Prima Godim then says, and extremely gay for us, if you have schmaltz kichlach and honey kichlach, honey cookies and schmaltz cookies, even though it's all called kichlach, that's shnei minim because they have different tastes, which is like different types of cakes. And then he says, which is good to hear, and befrad boira, that it's a din deraisa, chiyav chatas min ha-Torah, make sure that before you say mutter, that it really is mutter. So again, the shemayim of the Prima Godim is quite apparent. And as we mentioned last time, most of Hilchas Shabbos is Surah D'Rabbanan. Boira, the first 5 seifim, you'll see what you don't see any other place in Hilchas Shabbos, either mutter or chayiv. Let's move on. Someone bought for a Shabbos Simcha 200 bilkulach. And he knows how much baltashkas goes on when they have these big bilkulach per person and people throw out 90% of it. So he bought big and small, all of the same. But big and small egg challah or water challah, whole wheat, but it's all the same. And then Friday night they made a decision, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to set the table for the day Suda. And the bigger challah we'll use for the day Suda, because it's more negeya, but people might finish it. Shalosh Seudas will barely finish the Suda before Shalosh Seudas, so people just be yaitza. So he took all the big challah and set it out for the day Suda. And he left the small challahs for Suda Shlishis. Was that boyer? Because although it's all eichel, but he's only using it first tomorrow, it's not la'alta. So this is our Ramah. Gedolim and Ketanim is not boyer, and there's no problem whatsoever. Now, lamaisa, again, if it had a different taste, for example, water challah or egg challah, or certainly whole wheat challah and regular challah, so that we have the Chumash Hadesha, that different dogim, minei dogim is also. We saw the Prima Godim says that different taste is also. So egg challah and water challah or whole wheat challah are certainly examples of different tastes, which would be boyer. I'll give you a geshmak shayla because it gives a tremendous insight in the sugya. Let's say the same Baal Simcha, but he wants to be a little more different. So he bought a bag of challahs, big and small. Some of them were egg challah, and some of them were water challah. And then he made the same decision that by day I'm going to use all the big challah, and we'll save the small challahs for Shalosh Seudas. So what he did is Friday night, he went looking through this big mixture taruvais that has big and small water challahs, big and small egg challahs, which is pretty confusing, right? But he took out only all the big challahs, water and egg, but he took all the big challahs for at night and left the smaller challahs for Shalosh Seudas. What would you say? We would say, oi, that's real taruvais, but it's wrong. He took out only the big ones, big and small, not a taruvais. Who says it's not me? The Ramah. The Ramah, if you learn it quickly, you don't even see the godless of it. The Ramah says, even though it's big and small of 2 minim. So if you would take all the Egg challah, that's boira deraisa. But you took big and small is never taruvais. Now, Rav Shlomo Zalman and Shmir Shabbos, Gimel Chavzai and adds, but don't be a batlan, because you take out the big egg challah, okay, you put on the left side, take out the big water challah, put on the right side, so that's boira in the big in itself, two minim. So what it means to say is take all the big challahs and put it in a bag. So then you really are using the heta of big and small in a very unusual way. Again, it's not negay so much practically, but it's a beautiful insight into the extent of big and small. Question, someone made baby cereal to feed his baby, but he's not a very big lamdan in making baby cereal, and there are lumps in the baby cereal. Now, you can't give it to the baby, the baby could choke. So he wants to take out the lumps before he serves the baby. And the svar is, it's all min echad. So I said, you machaven to a maril. This is maril. Because regular baby food, you could feed a baby. But lumps of baby food, you could choke a baby. So it's two functions. And that, even though it's min echad in the ingredients, this is mamish the case of maril. Now, what Ma'aseh all is not lost, because if you just, now you're allowed to grind up that piece. Because ain't teichen achat teichen. If an adult wants to eat it as it is, so it's not even a question of taruvais, because it's edible, k'may shehi. Rav Moshe in Chelik Dal, Semayin Dal, Sifkat and Gimel said, let's say a person has a Hamish Gemach, he made his own orange juice on Pesach, and he doesn't like so much, he doesn't mind, but he'd rather take out the pulp. So if you drink it as it is, then that's our halacha in the Sif Yud, that if it's drinkable as it is, there's no problem of boyer. Now, a tricky issue is the bottom of kugel, cake, or challah got burnt, and the Baal Sabayis refused to serve the bottom with the top, it's burnt. They want to cut off the bottom and serve it. So if the burnt part is inedible, you know, it's like a carbon, oila kul Hashem, totally burnt, then it's a real psilis. Now, I wouldn't call it two minim, I'll call it a psilis. But lamais, you'll say, so what's the problem? And but so is an eggshell, but you're allowed to take off the eggshell right before you're eating. But this is not really the egg and the eggshell. This is not the betulada. It didn't come like that. And also, it's another eitzah. Take the eichel and leave the burnt part. So if you're lucky and someone very much likes the burnt part of the kugel, so matzah minas mina, you could take the burnt part and give it to him. For him, it's eichel. Even though some say that's more of an arama, but that might make sense. But if it's, again, there's no one around, so the eitzah would be, I'll tell you, the eitzah would be in this case to cut off taka the burnt, but leave a thin layer of the good. Now, why is that mutter? So here's a beautiful yisoid. Really, you think about it, the burnt and the non-burnt are not mixed up like nuts and raisins. The point of connection is what makes it a taruvais. When you cut off exactly down the line, and you cut off exactly the burnt and leave the food, that's boyer. I'll give you a better mush you could relate to. Picture black and white. Now, all know how that looks, right? And you only like the black part of it. So if you cut it down the middle, you separate it to minim. But if you cut off the black with a layer of white, so the problem still exists. You didn't change the problem. The point of dibuk is there. So all you did was you took black and you were eating the black. But you're not changing the teruvais. That's why the poskim say to cut off the burnt with a layer of edible would be okay. If you have burnt latkes mixed up with regular latkes, so that's a real taruvais. In fact, the Mishnah Berurah quotes from the Pri Megadim, if you have burnt pieces of salmon with regular salmon, even though it's all min echad, but that's taruvais, because that is psoilis. So a little bit seichel usually comes to the right answer, but when something isn't edible, it becomes a psoilis. The same thing if you have a rotten apple in a basket of good apples. So even though it's all the same type of apple, but if it's inedible, it becomes a psoilis. Now cutting out a little, let's say you have a little bit of the apple is spoiled. So cutting that out, be'emes shouldn't be mutter, because you could eat the apple and leave that part of it. It's not like you can't eat the apple without removing the psoilis. So eat around it and leave that part to throw out. Someone asked me, he puts out a nice whole roll of kokish cake, and the end doesn't look nice. He wants to cut off the end piece and leave the rest of it. So again, if you wouldn't serve it as it is, there's something wrong, it doesn't look good, doesn't taste good, whatever it is, Once you're telling me that you're not going to eat it as it is, that would be a psilus. So what you could do is you could leave a little more than you have to, or if you really be alam, then you could cut off the cake and leave the psilus there. So you're really taking somehow the oichel from psilus for immediate use. Question, which really is negeya a whole year, but Pesach befrat, is the question we began with. A person has a box of matzah, and shleimim, hopefully at least roiv shleimim, let's hope, and you want to make sure to put away for later because you can't risk having no shleimim. So question is simple. If you're taking out shleimim now, to eat now, to use now, so that's oichel mitach psilus, using your hand, and la'alta. But let's say you take out the shleimim for tonight or later. So it's not, it's not the heter of la'alta. So here we really could think about this because pashtus, it's all min echad mamish, the same hechsher, the same taste, in fact, it comes to the same oven probably. But then again, there's a function in shleimim that shevarim does not serve. And that's why the Shmir Shabbos in Gimel Lamed, he says, taking out the shleimim not for la'alta usage is bayra. We're going to classify shleimim and shevarim as two different minim, and therefore is governed by all the rules of shnei minim. However, most poskim, believe it or not, argue on that. And their assumption is it's a ma'ila, but it doesn't make it two minim, because the ik of matzah is not to have lechem mishnah. The ik of matzah is to have what to eat, lechem lecho. So basically, it would be like big and small of the same min. So we could say, wait a minute, but what about the maril? Maril says that matzah in matzah meal is a problem, so maybe matzah, shleim, and shevarim, but that's not really analogous. Because the tachlis of matzah meal is to eat. You can't eat the two together. But matzah, shleim, and shevarim, you could eat both of them. So it's not similar to the case of the maril. Rav Nissen Karel's Chotshani, he says, a maila hadinius, in other words, halachadik difference doesn't transform matzah into two minim. It's a maila, it's a mitzvah, but you can't make it, a ruchnius make it into two minim. Rabbi Yashiv and Ashrei Ish, Eins and Nechshev Psilus. You're not going to say shleimim, shvarim up psilus. It's fully edible. The Tzitz Eliyazin, Chelik Zayin, Siman Aleph. And I want to just add, we spoke about a punkt last week, but really technically, according to many shittas, if you have two shvarim, is also lechem mishnah. The main part of lechem mishnah is mishnah. So although we have the Ramah does add shleimais, but you can't say that a shvar, a shever, becomes a min sheni from shleimim. So again, we would have thought differently, but Rav Shlomo Zalman held it's taka two minim. Many pais can feel it's min echad. Another tricky question, and that is when you have chicken, but there's the top, bottom, what do you call it, white or dark, however you call it. But lamaisa, there are two parts of the chicken. Is that considered min echad or two minim? So if you're taking the part you like to eat now, there's no shayla. Let's say you're taking a part now for later, for tomorrow. In other words, if it's min echad, you could take tonight for tomorrow. If it's shnei minim, it's only for immediate use. So the emes is that a chicken is a chicken, no doubt about it. But people say, and they feel very strongly about it, that the different taste, the white is there, the dark, whatever the preference are. So now we have to clarify what makes something two minim. I'll give you a few choices. We'll go through each one. A different name, not really. If a different name, but all the same taste, that's not enough. A different taste, that we already saw. We saw the Pri Megadim says, in fact, he even adds roast chicken and cooked chicken is two minim. Okay. Function, that's the maril. Function is definitely two minim. Color, we'll soon see candies, the color. Color alone, that has no different taste. And between me and you, a lot of the candies have different colors. It's all the same taste. It's just food coloring. If it's all the same taste, so color would make it two minim. The cherries and the berries and the apples are two colors with two very different tastes that we understand. Size, that's for sure not a problem. Gedalim Mektanim. Quality, well, it depends. Burnt is no longer edible. So here the question is, how do we classify top and bottom of chicken? Is it like the vinskil of the Pri Megadim, like different types of berries or apples? So apples and cherries have a very different taste. Do we apply the same to a top and bottom? In other words, big and small, same function and same taste, but this is different taste. So the emes is that honey kichlach and schmaltz kichlach, Pri Megadim says, is two minim. Is that comparable to tops and bottoms? So lamaisa, we call it chicken, but then again it has a different name to it. So let me tell you, Rabbi Yashiv and Ashrei Ish, Yaz Nidbru, all say chicken is chicken, and it's min echad. Now again, people that are not so much more into the Gemara than the chicken, what's the difference? Bottom and top. But many poskim feel that if since today people have a preference, and maybe an insistence, it is two minim. Reb Shlomo Zalman in Halichas Shloim in Yichus Rishon Amud Shalom Lavav, he says it's considered two minim regarding Mishloach Manos, and also regarding Boira. Rav Moshe is quoted in the Shvus Yitzchak, that's two minim. The Rav Sternbach in his Chuvas, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky in his Sefer, all say that top and bottom are two minim. Now, I want to explain. Lamaisa, for us, even though you might say it's ma'oid keneged svaras halev, that top and bottom is two minim, it's chicken. But lamaisa, today people insist. I know someone that stopped talking to his son because he made a simcha and he didn't prepare a piece of white chicken. By some, this is a, dvarim shanasham tluya behem. But at the end of the day, it's very hard to say with certainty, but enough poskim say it's two different minim. And Mishnah Berurah says clearly in Sifkat and Tezvav, tzliya mavushal is two minim. So, it's hard to say that it's mamish min echad, and especially, today people are more funny about it. So we could definitely say it's at least a chashash of being two minim, and probably that's why you should treat it like. Eggs is its own interesting question. Hard-boiled or soft-boiled, is that two minim? I had a shiloh once raw and cooked. Someone had in the refrigerator, some were cooked, soft-boiled, and some were raw. Could he separate the raw? And of course, the yolk or the white. So we would take the approach, an egg is an egg. So any egg is an egg. But then again, we saw earlier that some poskim say that the het of an egg is not because it's min echad, because it's both psailas. So the only thing that we could say with clarity, the poskim say this without a doubt, is that a raw egg and a cooked egg is definitely shtumin. And don't forget, a raw egg in halacha is not muktzah because it's edible. So it's edible, but there's no doubt about it, a cooked egg is not at all similar to a raw egg. So a cooked egg and a raw egg is two minim. It's like cooked and roasted chicken. The question is the soft and hard, or the other question that we mentioned of the yolk versus the white. So we did see Sif Tezvav that an egg, according to the Magen Avraham, is min echad, so much so it's even mutter to use a kli, a misanenes. So that's why there's definitely a school of thought out there based on the Magen Avraham that an egg, yolk and white, is considered min echad, and even with a keli is mutter. But I told you there's another way of learning that Shulchan Aruch. The Pri Megadim says that it's because it's both psailas. And Re'ez Apel, the Mishnah Berurah, in Sif Kot Nun Ches, he has this shaila. Now his mashal is interesting, I'm going to tell you, but this is what he speaks about. If someone wants to have a power of a coffee, and this is before that the power of a milk was invented, so they used to take, crack an egg, take the egg yolk, and raw egg yolk, and put it into the coffee. Okay, he's worried about bishul. I don't want you to lose your appetite for coffee. That's what he says. So he says separating, here's you have a practical achmina. In his time, separating the yolk from the white. This is in a raw egg. So he says, like the Magen Avraham, it's fine. But the problem is, as he says, other poskim, machmir, most poskim are machmir. He quotes the Oila Shabbos and Lamaisa that doesn't agree to the Magen Avraham. So the way he puts it, it's asa and yesh makilim. V'nochain lahachmir. So basically, the Mishnah Berurah is paskening not like the Magen Avraham. And the truth is, we could understand this. And therefore he says, but don't worry, you can still have your power for coffee, don't worry. Take the yolk out of the white. you're taking the good from the bad, lechol alta. It can't be worse than taking the good from the bad. But what's negeya, the mush not negeya, but the aside is how do we view an egg. And halacha, the Mishnah Berurah paskins, the loikem magen Avram, an egg yolk and an egg white is two minim. So basically we could say, Taka, that if you don't like the white, only the yolk, so that's considered bayra. Now, but let's say you want to eat the yolk right away, and the only way you can get to the yolk is by taking off the white. So it's no different than taking off the peel of an orange or peel of an egg. So for immediate consumption, that's derech achila, and that is mutter. Another beautiful question is ice cubes. Now let me explain the shaila. People have ice cubes in a pitcher of water, which is so far so good, but they don't want the ice cubes to fall into the cup of the drink. So they have a spout, or some they have even a fancy, specially designed pitcher that retains, that holds back the ice cubes because it's much bigger and lets the water flow. So the question is, ice cubes in a liquid, is that min echad or two minim? So let's first say one point. If you have big piece of ice cubes in even a juice, which l'chayra, ice cube in a juice is two minim, right? But it's big pieces and it's very apparent, very noticeable. So even if it's shnei minim, but it's not bayer because it's a davar gadol, that's noticeable. It's not a taruvais. If someone cooked eggs for the Shabbos Sudim, but forgot to take it out of the pot with water, so the poskim say you're allowed to take out the eggs even for use tomorrow. The eggs is mixed with the water, but it's not mixed. It's a davar gadol in water. It's clearly noticeable. So a big ice cubes, even in orange juice, even if it's two minim, is not a teruvais. So ikachasim and a seifa. If it's not a teruvais, then even a pitch is fine. But we're talking about today, it's the fancy ice cube that's smaller, and it gives the teruvais impression. It's not big. So here, it's possible to say that we have a maril, because ice cubes you can't drink, and water you could drink. So even if it's water and ice cubes, it's two functions. But more pashit, ice cubes and juice, because this is water and this is orange juice. So therefore, that's clearly two minim. But here's the chiddush that some poskim want to say, that a small ice cubes taka in water is basically min echad. Why is it min echad? Because it's all water. And when the ice cube eventually melts, you'll drink it. Now, the only question is that, how does that work? Because right now it's big. But then again, since when it does melt, it becomes water, we'll consider it min echad. And there's a very interesting analogy the poskim discuss when someone pours beer. So the foam on the top you're not supposed to drink it. It's not healthy to drink it. But it's not considered a psilus, because if you leave it, it will dissipate and merge with the beer. So a psilus that very soon will be gone doesn't have a dim psilus. So the ice cubes that melts is like the foam of the beer. So definitely, if you have ice cubes in juice or any other beverage that dilutes the beverage, that's two minim. But ice cubes in water, especially if it's big, but even if it's small, it's a good reason to believe that it would be a min echad. Interesting shayla from a candy man, true story. He gives out candies, but after a while he noticed that everybody's fighting about the red candies. So he didn't come to Mitzvah Yidin. So he wants to take out the red candies and give out the other colors. Is that a problem of virus, taking out what he doesn't want to serve? Give. So I told him, well, first give the other colors and leave the red. That's no shayla. But here I looked into this a little bit, and it seems to be a fact that many type of candies, the colors are different, but the taste is the same. It's all food coloring. So if that assumption is true, then I saw the Chotshani in Amud Tzadik Tes, I'm listening to Karelitz, Sukriya is b'tzvayim shoinim, but taimim shava, even though a child only wants the red, but it's min echad, and there's no question of bayr. I guess the insistence is not really an insistence. It's just a preference. But he says it emphatically, even though it is, they want the red, but if it's the same taste, so color in itself does not distinguish one from the other. Now, red cherries and yellow cherries, or apples, yellow and green and red, that's certainly different taste. That's a good insight into different colors. different types of peppers, different type of apples, they're all different tastes. Regarding shechayana would be a different min, and regarding bayra as well. Someone asked me, I don't know, if separating the different types of animal crackers is a problem of bayra. So I said, well, one second, you think it's all fleishiks, you know what I mean? You don't have to shecht it, so it's hard to believe there's a different taste, that's for sure. So let's keep that as min echad. A challenging question, which we began with, is the skin on chicken or fish. So before we even discuss this, if you want to have the chicken now, or the fish now, and you cannot eat the chicken until you take off the skin, so even if we say that the skin is a psailus gomer, it's not worse than eggshell that's a psailus gomer, that's mutter miyad, you're eating right away, and you're not using a keli, even though you're taking the psailus from the eichel, but that's considered derech achila. So if you're eating it right away, that you don't need us for today. We're talking about you want to peel it tonight, so you'll serve it tomorrow, you don't forget to serve it, you don't want to serve it with skin. You're taking the skin off shaloi la'alta. So the question is, how do we classify, let's talk about skin of the chicken first. How do we classify the skin of chicken? So is it a klifa, like an eggshell? Not really, because no one eats eggshells. But skins of chicken, many people do eat. So maybe it's, not only is it min echad, maybe it's part of the chicken. And Rav Moshe and Chelik Dal Semayin Dal, Sifka and Ches, says this extent. He says skin of chicken is davar echad mamish. It's not pshat the same min. It's mamish the same piece of chicken. Once it's davar echad mamish, there's no problem of bayra, even shloi la'alta, even use a keli. The Shmir Shabbos in Gimel Lamed Beis, and I saw also Chutshani and Rabbi Yashav and Ashrei Yish, all say that skin of chicken is min echad with the chicken. Now, b'yesa be a b'yesa gishmak. If on the skin you have, sometimes a little annoying, you have little feathers or remains of feathers, that's bayra. Because that's psailas that nobody eats. But skin, the assumption is that people ate it. So why should that be considered a piece of chicken? It's the top part of the chicken. Now, that is, Rav Moshe says it emphatically, Shmir Shabbos writes this. The question is, what are the facts today in Tafshin Pei Dalet, where there's a heightened awareness of cholesterol, and if you eat it, gesund to hate, I forgive you. But many people would not touch the skin. Many people don't even like it anymore because they're so associated with, heart problems, they don't even like it. So if many people are makbid, can we take the liberty of saying it's cross the board min echad? More so fish, more so fish, many people daka makbid not to eat it. Now the Shmir Shabbos, who is make across the board both chicken and fish, he adds an adar, yesh levad es hamakubal. In other words, before you apply this, verify the present condition, the existing facts. And I do believe if you clarify the accepted practice today, I could definitely say it is no longer considered chicken mamish. Dr. Shmuel Kamenetsky, who wrote a sefer recently, he quotes Rav Moshe, he said he doesn't understand it. The ein derech b'yadam la'oichloi, and some people are nimis from it. He says it's hard to believe that it is min echad. Both Rabbi Yashiv and the Chutshani both say, they are mekel mikedidim, but they say if you don't like it, so you're not better than an istanis. Istanis, even what's drinkable, is asa for him. So, approach with caution. We will say if you want to eat the chicken and you terribly dislike the skin, you could take off the skin, samach lachila. It's not worse than an eggshell and any other peels. So it's not like you can't have your chicken or your fish, but the question is, can I peel chicken or fish in advance of the Suda that's not samach lachila? That we would say today, be very careful. Question, which is also negeya, and that is peeling apples today in Tafshin Pei Dalet. So the question is, can a person peel it even shalai? You peel it in the morning to give it to your child to eat it later, to go take it for a snack to shul for later. So in a certain sense, the apple peel is more edible than the skin, certainly more than the eggshell. And they say there's a lot of nutrients in the skin, in the peel of the apple. And that's where the Machzalayo, in the end of Siman Nun Aleph, he says, although to use a peeler to peel a cucumber that you don't need to peel is boira with a keli, maybe regarding an apple peel, which is edible, you hear what his chiddush is? It's min echad. Once it's min echad, then even a kli boira is okay. Now this was written in the end of the Lametz. The question is today, in Tafshin Peidal, many people for kashrus concerns don't eat the peel. So maybe that would be considered like a psailus, or shnei minim. Rav Moshe Grada is mekel regarding the skin of the chicken, but not lagabi apples. Apparently he held that that's less of an oichel. So again, it makes sense to say the fact is that less people eat it today, maybe it would be a psailus. But certainly you have to be cautious to use a kli. If we consider it psailus, then using a peel certainly would be a problem. Now, lamaisa, we do eat apples on Shabbos, and those that are makbid to peel it, take a knife. A knife is vadei mutter, because a knife is not a kli boira, a knife is a kli oichel. That's the best way of peeling your apple. Someone asked about had a nice roast, and there was a layer of fat that he wanted to get rid of before he served it. So in a certain sense, the layer of fat is the matzos, it's part of the roast. And not long ago, basa shamein was a maila. You have it in the Zmiris. So why is it a psailus? But again, in Tafshin Peidal, we're more concerned about, arichas yamim than fat in the chicken, or meat, whatever it is. So we consider it a psailus. So especially if you're makbid, so it has the status of a psailus. But again, it's not all lost. You could cut it off. Now, someone asks you, why is it a problem? It's not taruvais, like watermelon seeds, zechreinim levracha, remember them? But that was a taruvais, real mixed up. But the fat and the meat is not a taruvais, it's not mixed up. But then again, it's davuk, it's attached. So it's considered two minim, a psailus and an oichel. And the same het that we said earlier regarding cutting off the burnt part, if you cut off with a little layer of the edible, or you cut off the meat and leave the psailus behind, as long as you comply with the ayel, oichel, yad, and la'alta, it would be okay. A big question, which we once discussed, barichas, now we just have to know a little bit of it, is the easy filter, or this filter under the sink that people have because of the kashrus of the copper pot issue, or I should say, today people have a Brita pitcher, they like to have the water filtered, not because of bugs. So the emphasis, this is mamish, our sif, yud, that's why I want to at least mention it briefly. Let's start with the Brita pitcher. Those that are not familiar, it's water that has no problem of copper pods, it's after it was filtered, but they like to have the water still filtered with another, an extra degree of cleanliness, of purity. So the people I asked all told me that they have a Brita pitcher, but if they have no other water, they certainly would drink regular water. So they made it to sif yud. Even though the Brita pitcher would classify as a kli boira, but if you drink it without it, so it's fine. So this is the easy shayla. If basically most people are not makbid, it's just again liyesa se'es, so it's sif yud. The question is, the filters that we are concerned about, the copper pods, the shratzim, so this is of course much more of an issue. Because if you would not drink the water, if it does not filtered properly, so then we're talking about a case of real psailus, a real makbid, not just istanis, a real makbid. And taka to use the easy filter or the under the sink filter, whatever it may be, is bayir b'kli. So even if you're drinking the water right away, but bayir b'kli is still asa. But the good news is that very often the sink is mutter l'chol hadayis. Let's say I put on the sink to wash netilas yadayim for the suda, or to wash after the bathroom. So I don't care if there's shratzim in it, because I'm not drinking the water, I'm washing with my hands the water. In fact, the place can say, wash dishes, you don't have to have filtered water, because the bugs don't stay on the dishes. So you have three hechatimtzes that although you're makbid not to drink the water is unfiltered, but you very readily use the water that's unfiltered. So that's why we'll make the following conclusion, which is very logical. To use the water with the filter, with the bona fide kli boira, to netilas yadayim, ashiyatza, or dishes, we are all einam makpidim. So who cares if it's a boira b'kli? But I'm not makbid, I would use it without the filter. But to use the water for drinking and your makbid, that would be boira b'kli. Now, what's kedai to mention, sometimes a person puts on water to wash his hands, ashiyatza. So you could say, don't close the water. Because once the water is put on beheta, so the subsequent water coming out is coming out beheta, and that water you could drink. A mother making a pile of clothing Friday night for the child for Shabbos day, and she wants to sleep late, he shouldn't wake her up. She wants to take out the appropriate shirt and pants and socks. So if all the socks are the same, so it's all minecha. What's the difference? But the particular mother wants the socks that have to match. To wear black socks with the wrong outfit is mamish klai and betzitzis, mamish a terrible thing. So if she's makbid, so then it's shnei minim. Different color socks of other shnei minim. Now, that's pashut. Taking out of clothing, you want it to be the different dress in the morning, but you don't want to wake up your daughter that's sleeping there. So you want to take out a dress tonight for tomorrow. And you look at the closet and you get so good. It's so packed, different dresses. Taking out a dress from a packed closet, which is teruvais, and you mark a particular dress, so that would be bayra. Now, I'm not saying the other dresses are psilis, but if this isn't functional, that's not. So if the closet is widely spaced, so it's not a teruvais. So a little bit seichel you have to have. Someone said in his towel, the mikveh towel, he likes certain towels, somebody doesn't like. He wants to take out Friday night a towel for Shabbos morning. So I said, wait a minute, is it all the same towel? So no, he said no. So I chap what he meant. See, some towels in the mikveh there are so many holes. It's paritz merba ala oimid. There's more holes than towel. So and echanami, that's psoilus. But typically, if it's all the same, even though it's one a little bigger than the other, we have our heter. Piles of chumashim, beautiful shaila. So I'll give you a mashal. I'm not advertising, but our scroll is a good mashal. They have the chumashim, a bigger and a smaller. I mean, big and medium, I'll call it. Now, can you separate, when you have a pile of chumashim, put the big with the big and the medium with the medium? So pashtas, this is big and small. Now, unless someone is very sensitive, he needs the biggest dafka. But lamaisa, many shuls use the medium. Le'idar gisa, Ashkenaz versus Svard would be two minim. Now, I'm not saying which is not a psoilus chas v'shalom, but it's different function. So again, you have to use a little bit seichel, what's considered two minim and what's not. Someone asked me a shayla, he's very makbid, before he drinks any water, he pours off a little bit. So the question is that boira? So the Alta Skolan Rebbe, Lazar asked this to the Minchas Yitzchak, Chelik Zayin, Siman Zayin, and his response, Pashit, is no boira whatsoever. Because boira is when there's an oichel and a psoilus. Here there is no psoilus. All the water is good. It's just something for the shindal. You want to pour off the water. So how could there be boira? But then he adds, which is music tower adds, and he says that the truth is that he doesn't care what he's taking off. He just dropped any water that happens on the top. More so, he says it's like chatichas gedoilis and katanois, and this pashit is no boira. Now, I would have a different way of explaining it, because even if you say that the water comes out, that's the problem. But till it came out, it wasn't the problem, right? So it's a lumdus. Yesh breira, that the water came out, was boira. Yesh breira in a breira situation, it became boira after it came out. So it's like when the water was put on beheta, to wash your hands, you're allowed to use the water. But at the end of the day, I think all the Paiskim are Mekel. The Chutshani also says this. He says it's that Dava Skuli is not psoilus. Now this would give us guidance to the next Shaila. People are makbid. Some people are makbid. They don't eat what we call the spitz challah, the edge, the crust. So is that boyer? Teretz is not boyer because it's not really psoilus. It's something you're cutting off a piece. So that would be considered. Especially many people are not makbid. Someone asked me. He refilled. Interesting Shaila. He refilled the tray of hot kugel. He forgot to take out, there were a few cold pieces in it. So hot and cold kugel, the same type of kugel, is that boira. So it depends on your clientele. If people will complain, you're giving us cold kugel, it's not edible, it's too minim. But if it's edible, it would be menechel. And I want to leave you with two shilas, and hopefully I get here from the oilam after the shir. We discussed a few weeks ago, in the yeshiva we have a pile of shislach and teplach of cups, negavasa cups and basins. And the Bach on a Friday night can take out their cup and their basin to prepare the negavasa the next morning. So we discussed that since Lamais there's so many cups, the taruvais, and most of them are not mine, so the charitz are taruvais. And I'm not using the negavasa right away, I'm using it in the morning first. Filling up is not considered the derech achil, not using it. Okay, with that we discussed. But I must tell you, I found from a number of paiskim, the Chutshani, the Shmir Shabbos, and Shmuel Kanevsky, not regarding this shaila, but they all say that if you have min echad mamish, identical cups, but they happen to belong to different people, why is that considered two minim? The fact that you wouldn't use a kashal shalai midas ganafu doesn't mean it's two minim. But right, if it gives you a shish, allowed to use it. So it's something to think about. Maybe the fact that even though you wouldn't use it, but it's min echad. But the last shayla I want to share with you, because I don't like chumras, typical by nature, but this seems to be very logical. Let's say you use either a paper plate or a disposable plastic plate, and you finish eating, you throw it in the garbage. So I assume that's psilus, the plate, right? You don't wash, then you realize on the bottom there's a clean plate that's stuck to the top plate that you used. So Baltasha threw out a good plate. So you spend a nice few minutes, when these plates are so knetched together, to get off the bottom plate from the top plate. Why isn't that boyer? Top is psilus, and bottom is oichel. I'll say two is never taruvais, but this is stuck together. In other words, if you have a china plate of dirty and a clean one, that's taken not taruvais. But l'char, this would be considered a taruvais of psilus and oichel. So le'eis ata, if you pull down the good from the bad, that would be mutar. Let them talk to you.
Shame Irgin Shir Torah, like to give a big ashakar to Smith for today's shir. Today's shir was learned in the Nishmas Risha Chasya Fruma Bas Tzvi Hirsch Sholem Nuremberg, the mother of David and Ephraim Nuremberg, and Ishmosel Tzur B'Tzara Chaim. Have the great schus sponsoring a share. Call Irgin Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 and email ist@yeshivanet.com. Kananya ben Akasha Ima Botzakarish Baruch Lazakis is the show of Him Torah Mitzvah Mal and Chofis and Siddurim Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.
Go. Thank you for listening.
Over here it's borrowed that the shir and the sikkim are both min echad, they're both equally good, and there's no shaila at all. So we'll have the sikkim of today's shir and borrow of min echad. Shh.
Okay, just let's review what we learned. First of all, we saw the chaymer of boyer, the chumash and the taz both stress either it's mutta or malacha deraisa, so let's approach cautiously. But basically, two minim is boira, even though both are usable, but if you need one, not the other, so it's considered a teruvais. Min echad is mutta unless there's a real difference. And as we proceed, we'll see differences. But Amaril gives an example, matzah meal and matzah. You can use the matzah for matzah meal to make kneidlach. Eggs, pashtis, we consider it two minim, the yolk and the white, certainly a raw egg and a cooked egg. I forgot to mention, soft boiled and hard boiled, the paisa is considered min echad. I would have thought differently, but that's considered an egg. The water and wine that's drinkable, just you pass it through a strainer just to make it a little better, even though it's a keli, is not a problem. If you wouldn't drink it, or an istanis who would not drink it even though it's drinkable, that is a problem of boira bekli. We did see different sizes, slices of salmon or any other food for that matter. Bigger and smaller is not boira. Different type of fish, cake, kugel, cold cuts, different type, that's considered two minim, and of course is a problem. Different types of apples, cherries, berries, but different size bilkalach of the same quality. Whole wheat is different. Egg challah or water challah, but if all the same of whole wheat or all the same of egg challah, that would be considered min echad. All big, or taking out all the big or all the small from a mixture is also mutter, because that's considered the same yisoid. A lump in a baby cereal should either be smashed but not taken out. Pulp and juice, if it's drinkable, then you could even sift it. The bottom of burnt of a cake, kugel, etc., take the good and leave the bottom. Burnt latkes mixed with other latkes is a real taruvais. Spoiled fruit with good fruit is a taruvais. Shleimim and shevarim, most paiskim are makel, even for not immediate use. Top and bottom we should consider two minim. Eggs, again the yolk and the white, the Mishnah Berurah is machmir. Ice cubes in water is not a problem. Ice cubes and other drinks should be considered shnei minim unless it's very big ice cubes. Different color that has a different taste is 2 minim. Different color alone is not a concern. Skin on fish and chicken should be considered l'chayra like a psoilus, but it's mutter to take it off samach la'achila. Apple peels is questionable if today is still considered part of the apple. Layer of fat on roast should be trimmed kalacha with leaving a little bit of the food. Easy filter for non-drinking purposes is mutter l'choladeyis. For drinking purposes, if you wouldn't drink it without the filter, avad that would be boyer b'kli. A pile of clothing or in a closet, if you have a specific preference, you wouldn't use the other one, that's considered boyer. A pile of chumashim or siddurim of the same type is certainly not boyer. Ashkenaz and Svard would be a concern. Pouring off water or the end of the challah is a ruchni, but it's not a boyer issue. Hot, cold, kugel, depending on the clientele, like we said. But a different owner would not be considered 2 minim, and a plate stuck to the one to the other. If it's like a real teruvah, it should be a problem.